Are you sitting comfortably? Then let's begin. Roll title!
I've never seen such perfect teeth.
Welcome everyone to Well Good Songs. And I'm making this series for the simple reason. I want to be able to do this without this happening.
Shut it, you lunchbox!
Ouch! Before I start, I should remind everyone that music is a subjective topic and that if there's anything in this video that you disagree with, you're wrong. Band number 1, Ute. These three absolute musicians literatively exploded onto the Oxford music scene sometime in the late 00s, and while the first track that they came out with, The Refuser, was a great fuzz folky riff-filled single, and it caused a bit of a storm live and it earned them a place on a BBC Introducing session. It's not that song that I want to talk about today. The track that stuck with me over time is a B-side of this track called Panic Float, and at the time it didn't seem to get as much publicity. People weren't talking about it as much. So I wondered, why did this song get stuck in the crinkles of my brain? I'm glad you asked, because I've created a handy 3-step guide. The question is, why is Panic Float such a good song? Number 1, the structure. Building a song is something that I've been a little bit obsessed with for most of my life. And I've always been impressed by songs that can take the listener between different moods or timbres in a song without it jarring. Basically, creating a flow between the different parts of the song so they all make sense in the context of the song while still keeping things interesting. Panic Float is obviously named after the two main sections of the song.
Nice touch, lads.
You have the panicked, lyrically fraught minor key, dissonant first section, which we're launched into right at the beginning of the track. And this is ramped up in the second verse with the eerie hand claps and the distorted bass. Now, I'm a sucker for distorted bass, so bonus Ben points, but that's not what we're talking about. So back onto it. The second half, however, gives us airy vocal harmonies, a crescendo and delay-soaked acoustic guitar parts. And to illustrate this, we can plot this on a graph. To do that, let's go into the computer zone.
Computer zone.
Okay. Alright, so if you, like me in your spare time, you like drawing out song structures, let's have a graph. Let's start with a graph. Here's your classic song graph like this. Alright. So this one's time, obviously. This one, I don't know, let's say differences in mood for the, I don't know, what is that, the y-axis? The y-axis. Let's plot out this song. So the first half, as I said, we've got this dissonant minor key mood here, comes back down. In the middle, it drops down to just drums. Now what's really nice is your brain is continuing in this mood. So you listen to these drums and you're like, oh, eerie drums. And then you come back, well, the other two members of you come back and they say, no, major key and beautiful crescendo. We've got these two humps, a little bit like your average Bactrian camel, not the dreary dromedary. And camels, they like to do things backwards. We all know that. Here it is, standing the wrong way around in terms of the music. Classic camel behaviour there. Now camel faces are pretty hard to draw, I found out. So let's say, yeah, that's pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with that. Okay, it's a little bit like a dinosaur, but who cares? So back to the music. Any band can write the songs with like two different sections in like this. It's not that special. Okay, I said the Bactrian camel was awesome, but it's not that special. What you do to join these two sections together, we have two golden rings, and this is the chorus. The chorus is sung in the first half over this minor key section, and then it comes back in the second half. What you have done, they've linked these two sections together. Let's have what colour should we go with? Let's have a yellow one. I can hardly see that. That's terrible. Let's make it green. Green. Okay. So this is what they've done. We have the repeat of the chorus over the two different sections, using mainly the same melody, exactly the same lyrics in both sections. What this does firstly is join these two sections together. You know you're listening to the same song basically. However, I think there's a bit more to it than that. And part of it's the ambiguity of the lyrics as well. In the first half, when he sings "I began to separate into pieces," we get the idea that that's not what he wants to be doing. Alright, he's doing it to kind of, because he's so tense, he wants to get out of this situation, okay? He wants to curl up and float away, basically. However, in the second half, it feels euphoric, it feels like that's what he wants to be doing. So we get this very different feeling because of the ambiguity of the lyrics. Two things can be true depending on like the context of the song. Now I said that any song can have these two parts to it, and it's a little bit rarer for it to be pulled off in this way, I think, and have the kind of link between the two different sections, which works as well as this does. However, there are a couple more examples, some songs I want to recommend. I put links to them in the description below, so have a listen. One is off Sufjan Stevens' last solo album. I definitely pronounced his name wrong, I'm sorry about that, Sufjan. Sorry again. But this one, Should Have Known Better off that album. Starts over the minor, A minor chord. Should've known better, see what I happened to see. My black shroud, captain of my feelings, a pillar for my enemies. But about halfway through in this song as well, there's a transition. And then the main melody comes back over the major, the C. I should've known better, nothing can be saved. The past is still the past, the bridge to nowhere. I should've wrote a letter, explaining what I feel, this empty feeling, don't back down, etc. Another really good example is Cursive's A Gentleman Caller, which I'm not going to play today. It'd be pretty hard on acoustic, but have a listen to it. This starts off with a really, really discordant, angular, almost atonal verses. So it's a much harder take on this template. But about halfway through the song, switches, goes down to just cello, and then builds up again from there. The only thing that's repeated in this one is the doo 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 doo. But it's a bit more of a story-based song, so it's a lot more contiguous. Gonna try using that word. Might not work. You know what I mean. There's a much more obvious dynamic between the kind of horror of the first half and then the tranquility and relief of the second half. Give them a listen, they're in the description below. I interrupt this broadcast to check with our humble and luxurious Emperor Moshi Moshi that this track is of superior enough quality to warrant her attention. So, I will present this specimen with the ritual wordage. Please favour me, O Supreme One. Let's find the Bread Lord. Bread Lord. Supreme One. Luxurious leader. Risen number 2. 1 extra beat, or 2 extra beats. 2 extra beats. So sometimes bands use time signatures which are not 4/4. And this is a thing that happens, and I'm not against it at the best of times. However, sometimes it's very obvious, which is absolutely fine and enjoyable in its own way. But it's pretty cozy when bands secrete away a hidden little bit of timing funniness without you even really noticing. Hey Ya by Outkast is a really good example of this. It's such a catchy song, but there's a hidden 2/4 in there, maybe a 6/4. There's an extra couple of beats anyway which are not in 4/4. And it kind of throws the dance off a little bit, but you probably wouldn't notice if you're not paying attention. Now in the second half of this Ute song, the lovely half shall we say, they do a similar thing to the Outcast song, throw in a couple of extra beats that almost go unnoticed. But they do still have a bit of an effect, and that is to delay the sequence from moving on to the next chord, or it almost feels like a resolve at this point. I'll give you an example. So here's how it actually goes. Now if this just did a standard 4/4 section, it should go like this. And if I strum it like this, you can hear that it's a little bit off, and what it does is kind of catch you a little bit off guard and really delays going on to the next chord. So you have to kind of repeat that strumming pattern to fit in with the vocal melody line. Now I've got my theories about how making things a little bit more complicated than just your normal 4/4 means that it takes a little bit longer for you to get into the song, and then you've had time. But I think really in this case it's just a very catchy melody line, and so you hardly even notice that extra couple of beats. But it's certainly a factor that I think has made me stick with this song, or made this song stick in my head. Emperor Moshi Moshi's earlier disappearance was merely a test from the Emperor, which we failed. However, she's given us one last chance.
Your Highness, please favour me. I think she likes it.
Number 3. The individual parts. This is less about this specific song, although this is a good showcase for it, but more about Ute in general. Now, when you listen to their tracks, you can hear 3 distinct musicians. That sounds pretty obvious, and you could argue that all bands are like that. But I would argue back against your argument that most musicians are kind of just trying to sound like their influences a lot of the time. A lot of musicians just get into music to play the stuff that they like listening to. And that's fine, they can do that. Why not? But some musicians really stand out because you can really hear the identities of the different players. Maybe they write or play in an original way that doesn't really sound like anyone else. Maybe they can't help doing that. But what makes some bands or members of bands really stand out is their uniquenesses. If you heard a bass line by the bassist of Razorlight in isolation, you'd have no way of knowing it was him. But listen to a bass line by someone like Flea from D-Loused in the Comatorium by the Mars Volta, and you probably know that it was someone like Flea. This is just a long-winded way of me saying that the 3 musicians in Ute are pretty distinct and they really stand out. I think maybe being a 3-piece helped this a little bit, but also the fact that they all sing, whether it's backing vocals or do some percussion like clapping, it's still pretty easy to pick each one of them out, especially on this recording. This is just a long-winded way of me saying that the 3 musicians in Ute all have distinctive characteristics in their playing styles that makes it easy to pick them out in the song. Not only that, but they've made decisions in the writing of the song, which means they don't just disappear into the background. I mentioned it before, but the distorted bass on the second verse really adds to the atmosphere of the song, as does the clapping in this section, and the backing vocals, which are done by all three of Ute, really add up to make this song what it is, and none of them seem to just be trying to do what they think they should be doing. I love to hear this in the music and to be able to pick these out. It makes it a bit more personal, a bit more of a personal connection when you can say, ah, yeah, that's a mic bass line, or ah, that's an Ollie vocal, or ah, that's Joe playing drums. And that's my third reason of 3. So hopefully by now you'll have emailed your local MP and demanded that Ute reform and soundtrack your local high street 24/7. For the outro of this video, I wanted to make an alternative to the beginning where I was walking down the road singing this song, except rather than getting punched in the face, locals would come and join me in song. And I did film this, but somehow I didn't foresee it being excruciatingly cheesy. But I guess now that I've talked about it, I have to show you some of it. So to try and alleviate the cheese, I'll be putting in some other videos, maybe one of the camel, maybe some more of Moshi, okay, to try and make me look less like some kind of, I don't know, Ed Sheeran wannabe who's singing someone else's song. An Ed Sheeran cover wannabe. Yeah, Ed, that's a diss. Yeah. Alleviate the cheese. Do you like it, Mosh? What do you think? Of this? What do you think of this?
Yeah.
And below for all the relevant links. Make sure you listen to Ute's tracks. Check out Salvation Bill, which is Ollie's new project. You can find it on salvationbill.bandcamp.com. I don't know where you can find these Ute tracks I'm talking about, but I have put them up myself, so there's a link to those in the description as well. So make sure you listen to that. And don't you dare comment, like, or subscribe, you bunch of pencil cases.